Hi, I'm Ronnie from Ronnie's Garage in Southern California. We're having our monthly tech meet, and today we're going to be talking about the heater system on a Silver Cloud 3 and the other clouds also. So back to the AC. Now when a car has true factory air, the air conditioning will be built into this. It won't be an under-dash unit. It won't be an in-dash unit. It won't be an under-winged unit, which means under the left fender they made them to where they bolted on and they retrofitted them, and then they blew out the upper ducts, or they had other small ducts under the hood or the dash. Then they did the trunk units too. That's a real common thing that they did with the Silver Clouds, where at the time, to reduce import fees, they would send a car to the US incomplete. And then the dealer selling it would retrofit one of their units, whatever they used at the time. So that's a nice slick trick. I like that one. But that's why it's very rare to find one with true factory air, because the factory air, the evaporators, which are what cool the car. Now the evaporator is just another radiator, essentially, but it does the opposite. It cools the air. So it pumps Freon through it, and right before it gets into the evaporator, it goes through, Freon gas, when it's compressed, it's a liquid, and once it goes to the expansion valve, it goes through a small orifice. And when it goes through there, it freezes. It gets really cold. That orifice can change, and then it turns into a gas. It goes from liquid to gas at the evaporator. And that process, it goes through that small radiator. It gets ice cold in there. In fact, it has to regulate how cold it gets, otherwise it'll freeze up, is what they call it. What happens is it takes moisture from the air. That's why your car drips water when you run on air conditioning, because it's taking moisture from the air and it has to get rid of it. Now, if it gets too cold, it'll plug that radiator, because the ice will form on it. The same thing can happen to your regular radiator. That's why the Shadow 2s had an ice warning light to let you know that the grill is freezing. Kind of stupid, actually. You should be able to figure that out, in my opinion. So, any quick questions at this point? I know I've thrown a lot at you.
How can you test this electrical, the small motors?
We're going to do that. We're gonna on this car, we're going to go ahead and go to the switches and all that with the key on, and then I'll tell you where they're located, and we'll look at them and see if they move, if they don't. If they do move and we still don't get heat, then we'd have a blockage somewhere. If they don't move, that's the first place you got to start. Most often, on cars that don't work, you need, on these electrical ones, Silver Cloud 2 and 3, except Coach Built. Coach Built used the Silver Cloud 1 style system. It's typically a matter of disconnecting the hoses, flushing out the core. That's real common. And I back flush it. I usually take a funnel and put water into it until it starts running out, and then stick an air hose into it. Back and forth. Try to clear it as much as possible. These water valves almost always just need to be replaced or taken apart. They usually corrode. You can buy new replacements now. For a long time you couldn't. You had to fix them. The electric motors can usually be fixed. If they can't, on the Silver Cloud 2, you can buy them rebuilt. They're real expensive, just so you know. Or I put Shadow ones on. It's just a slight modification, and you can make those work. Just back up a little bit. The blower, both blowers, by the way, there's the one underneath the floor, and then there's the one out in front. This is what they look like. So this one's taken apart. There's an electric motor in there that attaches to this. So this thing spins, sucking air. These are super quiet. It's amazing. The factory air sounds so good. Modern cars use what's called, this is a squirrel cage. Okay? These put out more air, no doubt about it, but they are noisier. And their precept is I think it takes in air here, and as it's spinning, it forces it out and goes into the ducting. I just think this is so cool myself. But to fix them. You can find replacement motors, and then you got to fight with them rubbing here because there's almost zero clearance here. Question? No? Now, we'll switch over to the Silver Cloud 1 and the coach-built cars, okay? They had a system that was much different. What they have is under both fenders, they have a heater core, okay? Each one. One works the upper air, defrost. One works the lower air on your feet. And they have flaps, open and close out for those, you know those little snow packs up front? On the Silver Cloud 2 and 3, the right one is where all the air that comes into the car. And to be honest with you, I think that was a brilliant move, putting that intake for your cabin air right at the same level as that car's tailpipe right in front. So in traffic, don't run that shit because you're gonna go to sleep and die, right? So on the Cloud 1s and the coach-built cars, they have two systems. So both of those snowpacks have a purpose. And what they do is they go up under this is mounted under the fender on each side. This is the left one, I think, or right. No, it's a right one. The flap goes up front. The flap, this is a little vacuum pod, is operated by vacuum. Both the flaps and the water valves are operated by vacuum. And to be honest with you, the Silver Cloud 1 systems almost always work. Okay, almost always. The only problems you have is you'll have some of these go bad. There's a big rubber diaphragm in there that usually is attached to a wire that goes out here to this flap, and then this is a water valve. So what you've got here is this has a vacuum diaphragm in here with a plunger that goes down to a diaphragm which shuts off a water passage. Okay? Now these go bad, these valves, due to non-use. They get plugged up and that kind of stuff, but almost always the vacuum systems on these are pretty good, with the exception of the pots.
And normal Silver Cloud's better than coach-built one?
No. I think this is a better system because the air conditioning on these is usually a rear air, Cloud 1. They don't have it, they can't squeeze another thing in here that I've seen. Because this ducting goes up to a small heater core, one on each side. And if you look at a Cloud 1, Willie's not here, he didn't bring his car, but there's a bunch of hoses out under the hood that go to those heater cores, and they go to the water valves. And so both systems are pretty quiet. I like that part. Now, like on the factory air, Gene did his. We made yours factory type air, right? Yours is, we put evaporators in here, right? And if I remember correctly, if you want to put them in, 240Z evaporators. They're the right size, you can make them fit in there. But then you got to plumb it. You got to run your hoses and all that kind of stuff.
The 240Z, you mean like the Nissan product car?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
That's what we put in his, I'm pretty sure. Finding them is hard, but because they had an air conditioning system also, some of them. So might have been 260, 280, I don't know.
The Shadow mode is pretty quiet too. It must be really similar.
Well, the Shadow's pretty good. These are noisier, but one of the problems with this type of blower is the bushings for the shaft, they get dry, and you'll get that screeching noise when you first turn them on. And then you turn it off and turn it back on, it goes away, most of the time. Another thing they have a problem with is they've got these rubber mounts, you can see they're kind of broken on this, for the motor, for vibration. And once one of those things breaks, this thing rocks around and this squirrel cage hits the housing. But they're pretty good. I just like the Cloud ones because they're much more silent. Now, and one of the reasons I appreciate this system is that I put a lot of in-dash units underneath on the Clouds. They make small, compact little units. You turn that fan on high and it's just, you can hear it. It just sounds like a wind tunnel, whereas the factory systems are real quiet.